Her Royal Highness seems to be angry. Volume 1, Chapter 1, An Unknown World. The first thing she saw when she opened her eyes was an unfamiliar ceiling. She looked around to find herself in an unknown room, lying on a canopied bed she did not recognize. Where in the world am I? Did I not take my own life after the enemy had robbed me of everything? Leticiel's mind was in chaos. Restless, she sat up and looked down at her chest. There was no sign of the sword or the wound from her memories. The only things there were the frilly white negligee and her own smooth porcelain skin. But Leticiel was certain that it had happened. The sensation of her own life faded away. She could still recall it even now. Leticiel had definitely died. She was supposed to be, without a doubt, dead. Suddenly, the worst-case scenario came to her mind. Maybe the neighboring kingdom had someone who was skilled enough to treat even Leticiel in that state, and maybe she had been kept alive by the neighboring kingdom. Her face turned completely pale. If her conjectures were correct, Leticiel had been saved by the despicable enemy that had destroyed her everything. Leticiel gave up her own life so that things wouldn't go the neighboring kingdom's way, so that she could be with those she loved. And yet, everything ended up going according to their wishes. Right now, the emotion controlling Leticiel was not sadness or despair, nor was it hatred. It was an intense anger towards the neighboring country that wouldn't even allow her to die. Leticiel pushed away the comforter and got out of the bed. At this rate, the neighboring kingdom would use her as a tool. Her pride would never let that happen. Taking her revenge would be easy, but even if she did, what she had lost would never return. It would be a futile effort. Certainly, this place was within enemy territory. She had searched for anything to use, but there were no tools she could take her life with. As she began to grow impatient, some small glass bottles on the desk entered her line of sight. Without any hesitation, Leticiel grabbed one of the bottles and threw it onto the floor. The bottle shattered into pieces from the impact. Ignoring the fact that the glass could cut her hand, she grasped a large shard and pointed it towards her neck. What happened, my lady? Just when Leticiel was about to slash her throat, a young man clad in a black tailcoat entered the room. He had heard the sound of glass breaking and had come to investigate the cause. What are you doing? As soon as Leticiel's figure entered his eyes, his face changed color. He immediately raised his voice and ran towards her. Unlike the throne room, this room was quite small. Before the shard could pierce Leticiel's throat, the man had pinned her hands from behind. Please stop. Let go of the thing in your hand right now. Let me go. I will not allow it to go your way. If you stop me, then I'll even bite my tongue if I have. Please, don't act so rashly, my lady. Lady Dorsal. Leticiel suddenly stopped when she heard the man's desperate shout. It was not because the man's command had resonated with her heart. It was because of the name she had never heard before. Lady Dorsal? Who on earth was that? Wasn't she Leticiel, the princess of a remote kingdom? The glass shard was taken away from her while she was befuddled. But Leticiel had no time to worry about that. When she dropped her head down, her long hair flowed gently into the edge of her vision. It was a splendid, silvery white color that gave off the impression of being translucent, but it was an unfamiliar color. After all, Leticiel's hair was a dark blonde. As she raised her gaze, she found a small mirror before her. It was propped up against the wall, right next to the small bottles, but she hadn't noticed it at all earlier. The thing reflected in the mirror was the face of a girl she had never seen before. Almost transparent in lustrous silver hair, smooth porcelain white skin, almond-shaped eyes with long eyelashes, and hectochromatic irises in each eye. Overall, she was a beautiful girl with dignified facial features. Leticiel didn't know how old the girl was. Even though she seemed young, her features made her seem more mature. Her lack of expression gave the impression that she was a bit unfriendly. Who am I right now? When she tried blinking, both her red left eye and blue right eye were covered by her eyelids. The unknown girl in the mirror was without a doubt herself. That fact shook Leticiel to the core. Leticiel had golden blonde hair, both her eyes were lavender, and her past face had retained small traces of childish youthfulness, and was not as mature looking as this. Even though she had stabbed herself with a sword and died, when she came to, there was not a single wound on her body, and when she thought that she had been captured by the enemy, she had instead become someone she didn't know. I have no idea what's going on. Am I inside a dream or something? An absent-minded Leticiel was led to her bed by the maids who entered the room. They then took out a first aid kit from somewhere and started treating her. The hand she had used to grasp the glass shard was covered in cuts. Leticiel stared at the maids who were sterilizing and treating her wounds in wonder. Why are you not using Magecraft to heal it? Magecraft? Are you talking about magic? Her question was met with another question. Once again, she heard a word she didn't know. Perhaps this country used the word magic to refer to Magecraft. Even then, my lady, only a small portion of chosen people can use healing magic from the light element. Huh? That's why using magic to heal a wound can't be done at a moment's notice. She had never heard anything like that before. At least when she was still a princess, almost every person that could use Magecraft was able to use healing Magecraft. It was an age where one would simply die if they couldn't protect themselves. After finishing Leticiel's treatment, the maid tidied up the first aid kit and disappeared toward the other side of the room, behind the door. Leticiel looked at her hand wrapped in bandages. Even though the maid said that healing magic was rare, Leticiel was certain that she had used it before. She invoked her Magecraft to ascertain whether or not she could really use it. Without delay, the mana scattered about the atmosphere obediently followed her wishes and assembled in her hands. The flow of mana created a breeze that caused her silver hair to gently sway. Huh? I can still use it like usual after all. She had prepared herself for the worst for naught. Leticiel then tried to open and close her hand. The pain from before had vanished. Just like she thought, there was no way healing Magecraft would be rare. While she was thinking about that, the maid from before came out of the door and made a respectful bow. My lady, we will help you get ready. Please come over here. The maid led Leticiel to the room. No, to the walk-in closet next door. There were several maids waiting in the room, waiting to assist her. When she was a princess, Leticiel had to do everything like this on her own. Royalty didn't have this kind of luxury in that age of chaos. If they had money to hire servants, it would be spent improving armaments instead. And if they had money to buy a lot of dresses, they would have invested it into armaments instead. It was the most important thing. It was to the point where even the country's flag had to show that it was run by a warmongerer. If a country failed to do even that, it would be swallowed up by the surrounding countries. As a result, she never had servants to assist her, nor a walk-in closet with a large amount of dresses. Leticiel unconsciously pulled on her cheek. She began to worry about the state of this country that had this level of grandiose luxury. As a princess in a war-filled world, Leticiel couldn't believe the scene she was seeing at all. That really suits you, my lady. Really? Thank you. Leticiel came out of the walk-in closet while feeling conflicted. She was dressed in a lovely cream-colored dress and decorated with graceful-looking accessories. Hey, you there. Yes? Are you calling for me? Yeah, that's right. There's no one else here, right? Who are you? What are you to me? Leticiel inquired the man standing next to the door. He was the one who had stopped her from taking her own life earlier. She had so little information to go with that it could be safe to say she had no understanding of her current situation. She didn't know who he was or what his upbringing was, and of course, she didn't know his name either. What do you mean, my lady? Oh, sometimes you just feel like asking strange questions like this, right? Yes. My name is Ruvik, my lady's exclusive butler. Even though his face seemed to say that he had no idea what was going on, the man still gave her a proper self-introduction. Ruvik. Right. That's right. My apologies. Your name suddenly escaped my mind for some reason. She still had yet to get a good grasp of the situation. However, it was better for her to act like Leticiel. Even though she hadn't said anything strange, Ruvik seemed to be surprised by her reply. Ignoring him, Leticiel tried to grab the doorknob. While she was still bewildered by the current situation, her body reminded her that it was hungry, so she decided to have breakfast or something in the dining hall. However, she was suddenly stopped. Ruvik. Leticiel then looked up at him as if to ask him why. My lady, your hand is injured. Please leave it to me. Although it was fine since she had already healed it, Leticiel felt that it was better to not say unnecessary things and withdrew her hand. When Leticiel passed through the door opened by Ruvik, she was greeted with splendor similar to the room that made her stagger due to its radiance. My lady, is there something wrong? With this country being pointlessly lavish like this, I'm amazed that it has yet to fall to ruin. Huh? What are you talking about, my lady? Our Platina kingdom has been at peace for a long time now. Leticiel's eyes opened wide at Ruvik's words. There was no such thing as peace in that age of unending bloodshed. Furthermore, another unknown word came up again. She had never heard of the Platina kingdom before. She compared it against the names of all the countries she knew, but was unable to come up with a match. Well, in that world, it was an everyday occurrence for some unknown country to appear, and by the time we learned about it, it would already be en route to destruction. Leticiel assumed this country had also been born that way, and stopped paying attention to that detail. Leticiel walked down the long hallway with Ruvik by her side. On the way, she came across an older maid with a basket filled with laundry, walking the opposite way. When their eyes met, the maid slightly lowered her head, but she didn't even try to hide her frown. It was likely that Leticiel, or rather, Leticiel, was hated by the maid. Leticiel realized this, but she carried on walking as if it didn't happen. As someone who had tasted the depths of despair and went as far as taking her own life, Leticiel could no longer consider negative feelings towards her as anything but a trifling matter. To put it nicely, she was being prudent. To put it bluntly, she didn't care what others thought of her at all. The once cheerful Leticiel had disappeared. The current girl was cold, with a completely indifferent attitude. Perhaps human nature could completely change when faced with such an extreme situation. Leticiel mused to herself, as if she was thinking about someone else entirely. While she was elegantly walking down the hallway, Leticiel came to a sudden stop when there were no other people around. Naturally, the butler, who had been walking a bit behind his master's side, came to a stop as well and made a puzzled face. Say, Ruvik. Yes, what is it, my lady? Where is the dining hall? You've just been wandering around aimlessly? Ruvik's hysterical voice echoed throughout the residence in the early morning.